I have like this insecurity about bombarding people and
Mhm.
bothering them, by emailing too much. And I know, like, I've heard you say it, and I've heard, in the podcast, that you really can't email too much, and
Mhm.
people, you're not, on people's radars, and, they're not even paying attention. But like, I feel like I do pay attention. So,
Right.
like, there is this play space that is now closed, but like, they would email like every day, sometimes twice a day with like promos. And I remember just feeling like harassed.
Right.
So I feel like that stuck with me. And I wanted to make sure that I was respectful, of people's time. And I thought like if I didn't email them that often, that they would be more likely to open my emails.
Yep.
So, like I think my click through rate is like 28%, like 28% like
Your
actually.
click-through rate is?
No, sorry, not the click through. 28% actually open and read it.
Okay. Got it.
Um,
That's still good. I mean, that's good.
but it's gone down.
Okay.
So
So,
like the trend is like it's going down. So like I try to put up top like the things that are most important to me that I want to like emphasize. Like if people really only have like 30 seconds, like what do I want them to know? Right. So I try to put that up top, but it's still a lot. Like, because we have events, we have community work, we have like services that we have all the time. Um, I try to keep it within the brand of like who we want to be and the service that we want to provide. But it probably is too much. I do see like other competitors, like they'll put out an email just about parties,
mhm,
and parties is like a section in my email. So like I
right.
probably need to do like some emails just about parties, like promoting it out. But that's just something I haven't done.
Got it. So, a lot of things to kind of tackle in that one question. So, I'm going to take it like step by step. So, number one, and it's funny, I just had a call with Renee last week, who you know from the Playmaker Society group, and she had the exact same question about email marketing, like how much is too much. And basically, the advice that I gave to her and that she's been kind of implementing since then is, first of all, I do agree that, we do put a little bit too high of an importance on ourselves and on our business. And, because we are so close to it, we do live it. And you mentioned that you do feel like you do pay attention because, you are monitoring the competition's emails. But I would definitely argue to say that, you are not a normal person. Like that's not, that's a compliment. Again, like you said, you're very detail oriented, you pay attention, you have been, dreaming of this business for a long time, I know. So it's just in your nature, I think, to observe these types of businesses a little bit more closely than probably the average person. But the main thing that I kind of took away from that part of the question was that they were doing mainly promo emails. So what I had kind of talked through with Renee was kind of talking through coming from more of a point of service than a point of sales. So somebody actually, I think it was Alicia, mentioned in the group yesterday that you should really be coming from a point of helping. You should be your customer's helper as
Yeah.
opposed to their salesman. And I think that was right on the money. So to give you some specific examples, so what I had talked about with Renee was kind of, instead of just saying, here are our party packages, here are our prices, we're booking up for the season, go to the sales page and book your party. She kind of made a list of potential emails she could send based on like frequently asked questions. So exactly what you were thinking, kind of instead of sending one weekly email with everything you want to send that week, I'm not saying you have to email every single day. And I'm definitely not saying every single email needs to be promotional, but you could kind of take one frequently asked question. So for example, one of our most frequently asked questions was, how many people can you have at your facility for a birthday party? And I would take that question and I probably wouldn't write everything in an email, but I would probably do like a little teaser, a couple bullet points. And then I would say, here's this blog I created because, we're all about, getting that search engine optimization and content out there and things like that. So I would take that frequently asked question, how many people can fit in your facility? And I would take it as an opportunity to educate and say, listen, we're unique because we are the only, private party facility that can fit, our capacity was at the time. I mean, this was pre-COVID times, but our
Yeah.
capacity at the time was, 80. Chuck E. Cheese, none of those other competitors could fit those large parties. So I also pointed out, I called out that they were private parties, which not a lot of people were doing.
Yeah.
So even though it wasn't directly related to the question, I did take it upon myself to kind of mention why our parties are different, why people like them so much. You could invite grandparents and they're going to have just as nice of a time as, the toddlers because there's a coffee bar and all this stuff. So I always try to come at least, my rule of thumb is 80% value-based email. So educating, answering questions, linking to free content. So whether it be like a YouTube video of a party tour or a blog, just answering some birthday party related questions, I would try to come from a place of value and service and education 80% of the time, and then be selling something directly 20% of the time. Now, I say directly because in those other 80% of emails, even though I was answering frequently asked questions, even though I was blogging about like, a lot of concerns that get brought up and things like that, at the end, of course I would say, hey, if this sounds good to you, if, this question, or if this answered your question and you'd like to move forward with booking, here's how you can do so. So it's kind of like indirectly selling, but it's still coming from a place of service. So to me, I, number one, would definitely get over your fear of emailing too much, because it's really, to me, it's a bigger quality problem over quantity that competitor that you are monitoring kind of had. As long as you come from, again, that place of value and you're helping, you're not selling all the time, people are going to notice that, because you said that you were feeling harassed. And that word is something that, I would never want to come out of the mouths of anyone that I was, email marketing to, because, and, we're all on those email lists, every single email, like the ones I can think of off the top of my head are like Bed Bath and Beyond.
Yeah.
Like it's every single email is, hurry up, 20% off, when literally you can get that same 20% off coupon like anytime if you just do like a Google search.
Right.
So not only are they harassing you with the exact same deal, nothing new, but they're also creating like false scarcity. And it's just this like icky sales tactic that they've literally been doing, I don't know, maybe for the last like 15 years. So to me, I would just make sure you focus on the quality. And when you start thinking about, okay, how can I provide value to my customers? How can I answer these questions? That kind of organically evolves into a content creation plan. So a lot of people get, hung up on blogging, or they get scared of it or something like that, because they automatically assume that blog posts have to be like 5,000 words and fancy and all this stuff. But I would literally just hop on my Squarespace, Climbing Vine site, and I would just take 500 words and be like, listen, this is the answer to this question. Here's some pictures. Here's, a couple little anecdotes or stories about how people, were so happy that, grandma would have never come to a first birthday party if it was at, Chuck E. Cheese or something like that.
Right.
But because there was a nice couch and because it was private and because there was nice coffee, she like really enjoyed it. So I would think about that. I would rethink your content strategy first.
Okay.
And like now when I create 2 YouTube videos every week and a podcast, and like, I honestly feel like I'm giving like so much information away for free that becomes almost like a problem, but there's always a really good balance in between, I think. So again, when you think about email marketing, let's say you're talking about like events or something like that. Again, you can always come from like, not just, so I'm thinking of like a subject line, for example, instead of saying like, only a few spots left for our Santa event this week. Instead, you could say, hey, are you curious about how we run events during COVID or something like that? And then you could put some guidelines and at the end be like, oh, by the way, here's our event calendar. But to answer one of your other questions, I would definitely parse it out so that you're only addressing one specific thing per email. So again, I'm not saying that you need to email 7 days a week, but I would rather have you send 3 emails per week with one clear call to action for each email. I think we talked about that in that podcast
Yeah.
episode that you were referencing. Once I started doing that and just focusing on one call to action, check out our event calendar, click over to this blog, watch this YouTube video, check out our party page, whatever the call to action is, just make it very clear and make sure you do one call to action per email. I would rather have 3 very simple emails with one clear call to action per week than one weekly newsletter that is probably, overwhelming to people. I think that word that you used was right on the money. So that's what I would rather see you do. And to answer one of your other questions about how your open rate is actually going down, this is actually something that a lot of people get nervous about, but it's honestly something that happens pretty much with every business. So, when you are a brand new business and you just start an email list, everybody is brand new, right? And generally, the trend is such that when you first sign up for a newsletter or an email list, you're most interested like right at the beginning. And then as your lifetime on that email list increases, you generally say, like, okay, this is the newsletter. I'm not going to open that this week. I'm not really planning to go in. So once that customer, that the lifetime of that customer increases, the open rate just generally it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong necessarily, but generally the older and more mature your email list gets and the longer the lifetime is of each subscriber, it just naturally goes down. So of course, if it's like plummeting, then I would probably be concerned. So if it's going from like, 60 and then you're not really gaining a huge number of subscribers, but the next week it's like 20, then I would probably pause. But if it's just generally downtrending and you're a brand new business that's just, starting to mature, that I wouldn't worry too much about. When I first started, I remember I think my open rate was something like around that 60%. And then after about a year, it was around 40% because like half the people on my email list had been on my email list for about a year then.
Right.
And some of them had just generally lost interest. Sometimes I'll do like re-engagement campaigns or something like that, which, you probably don't need to worry too much about unless you start having like thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And then now it's, pretty comfortable at like 25% and it just kind of like sits there. And sometimes I'll like notice that one email doesn't really resonate. Sometimes I'll send an email that's like that gets a lot of intrigue and that one will be a lot higher. So all that to say, don't panic unless there's like a huge fluctuation, but also pay attention to like individual emails, open rates, click-through rates, engagement rates. One of my favorite things to do that you probably remember is when somebody first gets on my email list, one of the first things I do, because I have that like welcome sequence that I have. So whenever somebody opts into one of my lead magnets, or if somebody signs up to get like a free coffee, that one of the first things I'll ask, because, if I'm offering them a free coffee with the purchase of a play pass, I'm just going to generally assume that they're going to be visiting within, because you have to use it within a week. I would just assume, that they'll be in that week. Some of them, of course, will not. But I'll just kind of say, hey, did you use your coupon yet? Did you have a nice time? Reply to this email and let me know. So I'm starting a conversation. Just
Mhm.
getting them to reply to the email is one of like the best things that you can do, because it ensures that your emails are going to be, quote unquote, quote, whitelisted. So instead of going to like the promotions tab or something like that, you're going to end up in their main inbox. And you're just kind of solidifying yourself as an email that they want to open, because people want to feel valued, they want to be heard. So that's also something that I would focus on, if you're worried about your open rate or engagement, is just put a couple emails in your welcome sequence that don't do selling. They're not really asking for anything. They're just saying, hey, could we do anything to improve? Do you have any ideas? Do you have any feedback? Like I was talking about that with Renee before as well. Not only does it catch a lot of negative reviews potentially, because you can, have a conversation. A lot of times it was a misunderstanding. A lot of times people really just have questions. But it also just starts that conversation, and that generally leads to a better email marketing program and better results. Just that one, like asking people to reply and then replying back to that and just having like a little back and forth really, really helps when it comes to like, I don't think if that happened to anyone that they would ever feel harassed. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it just establishes that relationship as something that's positive and mutually beneficial right from the beginning. I feel like so many brands just kind of like use email marketing as like a blast, like a blaster. They forget that like one person is sitting behind that phone screen or sitting behind that computer reading that email. Like even if they have 10,000 people on their email list, they're not talking to 10,000 people. They're talking to one person that's just sitting there reading it. So I think as long as you keep that in mind, and again, keep serving instead of just selling, I think that's what's going to make the biggest difference in your email marketing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So no more cramming information.
No, I'm not a huge fan of the weekly newsletter thing. Just because even if somebody is really interested in like one little piece, they
Right.
just might be conditioned to be like, oh, this is the newsletter. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you can make your subject lines a little bit more specific, that will help the customer a little bit more because again, we're a little bit too close to our own businesses. And, let's say, for example, there's like, I'm trying to think of something like, let's say you're doing like a live shopping event and somebody really needs a last minute gift or something like that. They probably just are trained to not look for that sort of thing in a weekly newsletter type thing. But if you make a subject line that is very specifically geared towards that, it just helps them kind of sift through their inbox more. Because I know I get like at least 60 emails a day. And if I can't tell like exactly what it is by the subject line, or if it doesn't pull me in, I'm just like, don't got time for
Right.
this, don't have time for this. Cause we're a busy crowd, parents especially. So I would definitely rather have you send 3 like mini emails with one specific call to action than like cramming everything into one
Okay.
newsletter.
I can do that.